Today, Singapore is richer than its ex-colonizer, Great Britain. So when I hear people telling me today, oh, Africa is poor because of colonization, I'm like, please, let's move on from that. It had maybe a tiny percentage in where we are today? Maybe, and I don't know. But I know it's not the cause. Many countless countries have been colonized before. And by the way, colonizing one another is humanity's history. It just happened that maybe Africa has been one of the last, colonized region in the world. So in our psyche, it is there and it acts like nothing happened before to others. But flash news, it's the history of the world. We've been capturing each other back and forth, all of that.
Good evening. How is everybody? Good morning. Buenos dias. How many other words and phrases can we use?
Konnichiwa.
Guten Tag.
Nihama. Annyeonghaseyo.
I was trying to remember the Japanese. Anata that my dad would cuss me. Marley would say, Mom, you don't remember anything. So we would like to say today's video might press a bag of people. Press is the word, isn't it?
Yes.
You might feel like you're getting kicked in your chest today. But as I said from day one, because I'll speak for myself because she's big enough to speak for herself. What I like to say is, I don't like anyone. I am not veering to any side particularly. You remember when Bob Marley was asked a question by a reporter, you're half black and you're half white, so which side are you on? He said, me not dep on any side, me dep on God's side.
Right.
And that's all I got to say.
Please.
Right? Because
if it's not the way.
right, because I taught you, for me it's about character. Because some of my own black people,
Unrighteous.
please, you said it very dignified because I want to say no blah, blah. Yeah.
Yo.
So questionable. Yeah me. And then I've got beef with certain white people too, in my family too. Yeah. Long days, and that. And mixed race people, family. And all kind of people in my family, yeah. So I'm about character more than anything. So anywho, what I'd like to do is cover some things that we didn't finish up with on the last video. And if you haven't watched it, well, go back. I was surprised at the jumping views over one night. I said, ooh, we're doing,
like that, yeah.
doing God's work. My head looks like a bucket today, innit?
It's still light.
It's the light beaming out of my brain. Anyway, read this to them, please. I would like you to do that.
So, before 1790, there was a population of 360,000 Africans. There was 230,000 Englishmen and 1,000 Jewish, amongst other statistics.
That's right.
White.
Germany, Scottish, Ireland, Netherlands, Wales,
Sweden, and other.
And they say, no, we'll get into that.
But the British total is 425,500.
But don't you think it's interesting that they say Jewish like it's a country?
Yeah, exactly. Sus.
No, I'll explain that later on. But that's how significant they were as people. But
it's not a country.
No. What it is it's a sect of people.
Yeah. I understand that, but that shouldn't come under country.
Yeah, but it will make sense later on.
Yes.
It will
Very bad.
It will make sense. So, what the point in what we're saying is this. Whatever you think you are right now, all of us we're descendants of some kind of madness. A lot of madness went on before we got here, and we're in this. We have certain, what's the word? Attitude, prejudices, stereotypes, and such forth. But this video and the video before it break down the fact that actually we're not disconnected.
Yeah.
Actually, we were right next to each other when things were going on. It's so what's the word?
Apparent.
It's very apparent that we've been lied to, and we've been perpetuating the lies without even knowing it. So I'm going to start off with some information concerning Africans in conjunction with being a Jew. And so, what I have for you is, this book is called Africans in the Spanish Colonies. If the 15th century history in Americas was characterized by the drama of first contact, and the 16th century by continued exploration, conquest, and expansion of Spanish hegemony, the 17th century has often been described as a time of protracted depression and decline, pointing to the drain of European wars, metropolitan bankruptcies, depopulation in both the metropolis, and the colony, declining mineral revenues, and Spain's failures to adequately provision and protect its American colonies. So, some historians have emphasized the deprecation of overextended Spanish empires. Indeed, Spain was hard-pressed to maintain its grip in the face of French, Dutch, and English challenges, most of which focused on the circum-Caribbean arena and the transatlantic trade, which was Spain's lifeline. So why do people behave as if the transatlantic slave situation was all about Africans? It's not a diss. I'm just saying, why are they not speaking about us? Why? It's
because it is purposefully, but you know, if you own so much of America,
yeah,
as Indians.
Oh, well, why would you speak about the Aboriginal people of that? Okay, fine, fair enough. But as of all these problems beset the empire, Spain's colonies were forced to develop their own resources and
were peaceful as well.
True, that's what they said it themselves.
Please.
And find ways to provide for and defend themselves. It was a time of improvisation, adaptation, accommodation, and change. Pragmatism ruled. Unenforceable or impractical mercantile and governmental restrictions were more easily ignored than in the past. So basically they could do what they wanted, right? As were even more social distinctions, which in times of crisis were a luxury colonists could ill afford. It was a moment when demographic determinants, frontier conditions, and external threats to Spanish sovereignty combined to create leverage and opportunities for certain groups. Africans, heavily concentrated in the coastal circum-Caribbean, were embroiled in the imperial contests played out there, and, like Europeans and natives, Indians, they carefully evaluated their position and acted in what they perceived to be their own best interests. In short, they made choices and concessions and were agents of change who have gone little noticed, although their tenure in America, in the Americas matches that of the Spaniards, the Europeans, and the Indians. How many people knew that? Let me continue.
Be hiding information, but then at the same time, it's just there for you to read.
Right. And for all the scared youths that, don't say anything, because anyway, I'm going to get to that. I'm going to break it all down. African incorporation into Spanish society predated the American experience. Predated it. By 1525, 5,271 slaves appeared in notarial records of Seville. So before the American, almost 400 of whom were listed as blacks or mulattoes.
Right.
So they listed them as blacks or mulattoes, right? So what that means is, Just because you hear African, it doesn't mean that they're talking about Africans.
Yeah.
And they do that a heck of a lot.
But white people just do that. They still do
But
it
it's
now.
for a reason, though. It's for a
They're
reason.
very crafty.
Right. Now, you know, if you don't know, mulattoes are mixed race. The blacks, well, we will get to it. No. We'll get to I know exactly who the blacks are. African slaves were an important source of hard and skilled labor in Spanish mines and agriculture and in Spanish port cities. Although excluded from Spanish guilds, Africans were also artisans and petty merchants and domestic servants in Spanish households. In all these capacities, they worked alongside slaves of diverse religious and ethnic backgrounds. Are you ready for this?
Well,
including Jews and Muslims, Egyptians, Syrians, Greeks, Russians, Sardinians, and even Spaniards who had been captured in just wars, been condemned, or had sold themselves into slavery.
sold themselves. Crazy. Your people sold you out. That's what that is. Because unless, you know, when they say, you know, like for wars and stuff, and they say, okay, you're being shipped out, and if you think it's an invitation to somewhere, and you're gonna get loads of money for your family back home, turns out it's proper hard labor, whipping you.
Yeah, it might be, when they say, like indentured servants, you come, you give us a year, and we'll give you this, and we'll give you that. We'll give you land, we'll give you... So, I would like to take a pause and ask you, did you hear what was just said?
Did you hear?
But you know what? I'm going to continue and we'll come back to it. Just as all slaves in Spain were not Africans, nor were all Africans slaves, enslaved persons of any race in Spain had many avenues out of bondage. Spanish law and custom granted slaves a moral and judicial personality and legal mechanisms by which to escape abusive owners. Well, that's nice. Social and religion values promoted paternalism towards miserable classes, which must mean the poor, the slaves. What do you think? Poverty-stricken, poor, people with no choices. It'd be a rude statement. Miserable.
That's also rude.
Okay. Which sometimes led owners to manumit favoured slaves, so allow them to be free. Probably said a long time ago, white slaves were allowed to pay for their freedom, and the blacks weren't. Remember, I've said that to you many years ago. This is what I'm talking about. Furthermore, slaves were permitted to hold and transfer property.
Excuse me.
I know what this is. And with their peculium, they could purchase their freedom or that of relatives or friends.
No, but you know what? They've said this in movies, like, let's say 12 Years a Slave. You know, once they picked enough cotton and they've raised enough money over the years, they can say, oh, I want to buy myself out. But even then, it's some type of trickery, because they have to get some white man who can vouch and say, yeah. Because who's really got like 10 shillings?
Wow.
Imagine. Or £10 in that time.
Do you know what? It's going to unfold. Okay. So this proves to you now, remember, you know what ethnicities are. You know what races mean. So you know that different people were in slavery together in Europe. And I'd like you to hold that in your head. Before the Americas, blacks, whites and others were together. So everybody saying things about people mixing, the mixing of the races, it was going on a long time ago. Anywho, I shall continue. Which sometimes the owners to manumit favoured slaves. Furthermore, slaves were permitted to hold and transfer property. With their peculium, they could purchase their freedom or that of relatives and friends. The emphasis on a slave's humanity and the lenient attitude toward manumission created a free black class.
Well, but what is that free black
Don't
class?
worry, we'll get to it. That filled accepted economic and social roles, and even at the lowest level, political roles. Ooh-wee. Ooh-wee. I would like you to keep that in your pocket. And I would like you to also, well, I'll say it at the end. So, in Spain's largest city, Seville, free and enslaved Africans congregated in ethnic enclaves, such as San Bernardo, San Roque, and San Ildefonso. As their numbers grew, Isabel and Ferdinand, do you recognize those names? Named Juan del Valladolid of noble lineage among Negroes.
Noble.
Now, who are the Negroes?
Benin. And who else? Waida, which is Yahuda. Everybody knows that now.
So it's gone from blacks to Africans to Negroes.
Now, they keep changing the classification of these words. When I was growing up, they used to call me colored. I'm used to custom about it. I'm not a rainbow. You're more coloured. There's a whole poem about it. You change all these colours. You go red when you're hot. You go blue. Sorry to my white baby dads, but yeah. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Long day.
But before, well, you'll find out who they call colours when I continue. So, are the Negroes... Well, what I will say is the Negroes are normally Africans, but they might be singling out a group.
Yeah, they're just taking the piss. Because that's how you would never find out who's who.
Yeah.
Because you keep switching
Right. So, okay. So, let me read that again. So, Isabel and Ferdinand named Juan de Valladolid, the city's African community, and be its chief and judge. So it sounds like a Spanish black slave became the judge for an African community. Yeah. And be its chief and judge. Root in Ortiz de Zuniga. That don't sound good. The nigger. 1975.
Yay.
This president opened the way for other free blacks and foreshadowed Spanish practice in the Americas of enacting dominion through natural... Well, I cut that bit off. But basically, for them to be able to go to the Americas as free.
You know when they say, like, civilized blacks and how the Indians were savages.
Right. You're getting it now. So let me just make this clear.
So they're bringing them lot over to make us more civilized.
Right. So let me just make it clear.
Palatable.
If you didn't catch it, I'm afraid I have to tell you again. Right. So African slaves were an important source of hard and skilled labour in Spanish mines and agriculture and in Spanish port cities. Although excluded from Spanish guilds because they were African, I'd like to keep saying it, yeah? Africans were also artisans and petty merchants and domestic servants in Spanish households. In all these capacities, they worked alongside slaves of diverse religious and ethnic backgrounds, including Jews and Muslims, Egyptians, Syrians, Greeks, Russians, Sardinians, and Spaniards. So the African is not an Egyptian, they're not a Jew, they're not a Muslim, they're not Syrian, they're not Greeks, they're not Russians, and they're not Spaniards. And the reason why I'm saying that is because everybody's jumping on board about who Jews are right now. And I don't think people fully understand how many Jews and how many descendants of Jews and how many Jewish of the Jewish and the ish they are. In fact, they're not hardly a Jew at all.
Please, begging it.
Right? Now, I am very aware that certain elders are talking about their history of being a Jew in Africa. I've seen videos of people talking, right? And especially Americans being sycophant because you don't know who you are.
Please.
Listening to it, and I'm not going to say it's being purposely done, right? You might just not be aware, but keep listening and you'll understand why when you say you're a Jew, just like I said, when people say they're from Egypt, ask them what Egypt. When somebody says someone says they're Caucasian, ask them which Caucasian, because I will read something like that, about that out to you. Because if you go right now and type it in Google, Caucasian origins, it will tell you it depends which era you come from. Why is that, Eden?
The Circassian.
Because there are black Caucasians and white Caucasians, in short.
So
Oh, you don't like the sound of that, do you? Right, okay. So I shall continue.
I digress.
I shall digress. Oh, okay.
Wow.
So this book is called South African Jews and the Apartheid Crisis by Gideon Shimoni. The widespread eruptions of unrest in South Africa in the 1980s have focused attention on various aspects of society, including its small but influential Jewish community. That community occupies a special place within South Africa itself and also on the worldwide contemporary Jewish scene. In the South African context, Jews have been very important in the economic and cultural development of the country. At the same time, they have been prominent in manifestations of resistance to the apartheid system by which the whites have dominated the society as a whole. In the Jewish context, the situation of South African Jews is highly unusual. A Jewish community that shares its caste-like status of the privileged in a society based upon a system of legalized racial discrimination. The distinctiveness of South African Jewry. In 1987, the estimated 115 Jews of South Africa constituted no more than 0.5% of the country's composite population, consisting of 19.7 million blacks. Here we go again. It didn't say African, it says blacks. 4.9 million whites, 3.3 million coloreds, people of mixed race, and 900,000 Asians, in brackets mainly Indians. Jews belonged inherently to the dominant white minority, forming 2.3% of the total, because to do with the whole, we class you as white, we class you as...
Yeah.
Right. As for the history of the community, it began as an incidental offshoot of British Jewry in the 19th century, was consolidated by a broad wave of immigration from Eastern Europe between 1880 and 1930, and was finally augmented by a small influx numbering some 6,000 of Central European Jews fleeing the Hitler's tyranny in the 1930s. South African Zionism was deeply involved in a local community life. It remained the preeminent ideological orientation of South African Jewry, providing the anchor for Jewish ethnicity no less important than the synagogue for the Jewish religiosity. Jewish immigrants to South Africa belonged from the outset to the privileged white segment and normally lived their lives within the confines, exempt by virtue of skin colour from discrimination suffered by all non-whites. They enjoyed full civic rights in the parliamentary democracy of the whites, outside of the economic sphere in which, in common with all whites, they related to other segments of society as masters to servants. So also what it says in this book is the South Africans were very fixated on this race thing. So when the the Jews turned up with, because the thing about the whole Jewish thing is, okay, so we showed you that picture of King James who killed the Moors, and you saw the black man falling into the floor, and that picture in itself was telling us everything from the start. First of all, it was telling us, so there were black people in the same era when white people were reigning. So all these pictures, and you only ever see whites. It is clearly purposefully done.
Of course, even the paintings.
It's done on purpose, clearly.
How can you spend like 24 hours trying to paint Queen Elizabeth, but whenever there's a black person in the picture,
You can't find them.
them.
And you notice that when you start looking for people, say it's 16 something, you'll find a lovely picture of a white person, and then suddenly
with hella detail.
Yeah, there's no picture for other people, and all them people that you can't find are without doubt black. So what I'm saying is that picture that we kept seeing, when we say stuff's in your face, it's in your face. The Moor is the Spaniard. They're not African. They are the black Muslim. Yeah, and they had issues with the French, who are depicted as the Jews, who are also called Huguenots. If you did not know, that when you hear things about the Huguenots, you only see white people. So the blacks they're talking about that went to America and various other countries are the Jews. The Jews, but when they went to these countries, they didn't just go as blacks. They went as blacks, whites, and coloureds, which are the mixed race people, right? When they got to South Africa, they split them up, and it says they were fixated on their wealth. They took the blacks, because there was this divide, they took the blacks and put them in the group with the Africans and forced assimilation and made them call themselves Afrikaners. So no longer were they, and they took on the identity of the Jew. So I hope that clears it up for you. And there are like, in this, if you go on JSTOR, it's called Just Store, you can read a lot of books for free. But what I'm saying is there's like almost 2,000 books on this same subject.
Yeah.
So anybody feels like what I'm saying is unfair, we'll go through it a bit more. And if you're a Jew, if you're saying I am a Jew, yeah, we are the chosen, then what you need to understand is that you're saying you're from Europe. And why are you from Europe? Well, if you watched our previous video, where is Jerusalem? Where King James is. That's why you read the King James Bible. What happened was there was a fight to throw certain people off the throne. The same person that's falling on the floor with a sword in his head. Here's another indication that an African is not a Jew. The clothing. The clothing's not matching to the other pictures of the clothing that they say Africans wear. And the reason why I'm not being derogatory, England is far colder than Africa. So you're going to be layered up and all that stuff there.
Or xenophobic, please.
I'm being xenophobic.
No, or that's what they like to say. You're xenophobic
but
when you
you
say anything against the Africans.
This is my problem. So here's what I'm going to say. So now we've just covered that little subject because I'm going to go into it more. What I'd like to know is, why is it okay? Like, first of all, us as Caribbeans show Africans the most respect.
Please.
And Americans.
Paying homage, all sorts.
When we come to your country, we come and we don't come with our hands long. We bring something that's going to help the economy, right? We respect your customs and all of that. You got Wizkid out here using not just African vibe, but the whole Caribbean patois thing, jumping out of vans. You've got Chris Brown working with him. So we're never against you. In fact, we're calling ourselves Africans. And you do the same thing now. When we get round you, you say, you're an African. You know how I've always known that we're not Africans, because Africans kept telling me I'm not African.
Hello.
They often told me, where you from? You don't look like you're not African. Right?
Mm-hmm.
I had an occasion where I went to a shop, hair shop, and I was wearing my hair straight that day. And I said to a woman behind the till, have you got something that's more for like my hair type? You know, before I could even think, my woman jumped round the till and had her hand in my head till I felt like my head was tearing out my scalp.
Oh, it's soft. I hate.
All of my ancestors had to hold me down and refrain me from kicking her in her chest. I'm not joking, because I would never take my hand up in your head and draw out your scalp.
Without consent.
No, because when white people do it.
Yeah, exactly. No,
so what I'm saying is, now don't get me wrong, we're in the UK, and in the UK we mix. I've just showed you we mix. Unless you are totally ignorant, you don't understand history, you don't understand the whole thing's a lie, we mix with Africans, Indians, Chinese, European, Eastern European, from different cities, we mix. We don't have those issues.
Let's go.
We do not have them. But I found with some Africans, they definitely have an issue. And the thing is, you've been called the motherland, and everybody comes out of Africa. But a lot of you are very intolerant to anybody that's not from Africa.
Please.
And I don't understand why it's okay for you guys that think that way to say whatever you please and to behave in whatever ways you want. But when we're making a valid point and observation about the way some of you deal with us,
just an opinion,
it's a whole disrespect. What I would like to know is, on learning this information, why are you not sad for us that we haven't been able to call ourselves who we are and have our culture? Why are you not sad for us? Because I can see people already. I've seen people who've emigrated to Africa, and sometimes they have bad experiences with people. They're not telling everybody the whole of Africa is full of evil people. They're just telling you there's certain things in the culture where they always want money or they're scamming you. Not everybody's like that, but this is the things you can experience. Now, my thing is this. Why would you defend that type of behaviour? What is it about?
You see it as, you're brandishing our name, but if that's the case as well,
if you come to England and black people scam you out your money, I know Africans, everybody will know about it.
Exactly.
So what is with this sycophant behaviour to the point where I've got to deny who I am
to appease?
Now, in reading these books, you will also find that it will tell you this. Africans were having relationships with the Europeans a long time ago.
Because written records were unknown throughout most of pre-colonial Black Africa, much of its history is lost, except as preserved in oral traditions, in the writings of Arabs or Europeans, or in the researches and surmises of archaeologists and anthropologists. Nevertheless, enough is known to dispel some common misconceptions about Africa. The peoples of Africa were not simply hunters and gatherers of the spontaneous produce of nature. Agriculture existed for centuries before the Europeans came. So did animal husbandry, in areas where the tsetse fly did not make it impossible.
It tells you is that the Europeans were far less interested in Africa than they were in America. And half of the reason for that is because it was cheaper to go by sea than to get things across from land to land.
Iron, gold, and salt were likewise produced in Africa many centuries before the white man came, and in the late Middle Ages, Africa became Europe's principal source of gold. Cloth and clothing were manufactured in Africa more than 1,000 years before European colonization in the 19th century, and while Africa later imported European cloth, it also exported its own cloth to Europe. Nor did the economy remain stagnant or unaffected by new options presented through outside contacts with Europe, Asia, or the Middle East. Many crops now regarded as traditional in Africa originated in Europe, Asia, or the Western Hemisphere.
So,
the exchange.
The thing is, why is it that we have not been able to speak on our history? Okay, I'm going to move on. Now I'm going to talk about the Jew. Now, when you say Jew, once again, you have to ask which Jew. I shall explain. Okay, so when they say Jew, they say the Jews are French Protestants involved in things called just wars or religious wars. Now, they had their way in regards to the Bible and whatever they deem was righteous. This might offend some people, but there were other Jews other than the French. But I'll get back to that. The French Jews are the blacks that went to America, and they did very well over there. In fact, what I would like to say is, with these wars, their whole situation where they were put in exile was called an exodus.
Mm-hmm.
Which makes sense.
In the Bible.
Which makes sense because they are the Jews. So so we made it clear, a few things clear. There were white Jews and black Jews and coloured Jews, i.e. mixed race. So everybody that's been cussing and saying, no, there's no white Jews or Arkansas Jews, that's why I said to you, see this Jew thing, there's so many, and not only are there different levels of Jews and different eras of Jews, there are different Jewish. They're so Jewish till there's no Jew in there. And we'll get to that in a minute. Now these Jews, back in the 1500s, 1600s, 1700s, when they went to various different parts of the world to try and get freedom and live prosperously, which they did in South Africa, but due to the apartheid thing, well, it wasn't good for them, was it? And in fact, that started off a lot of wars. Do you know what happened? The people that we class as Jews now, what happened as the years went on, because of the apartheid thing, they became Boers, Boers, who were the whites. And you know who is a great depiction of them? Indiana Jones. And they had wars which actually are written about with Shaka Zulu.
Yeah.
Because, those Boers were actually Germans. Oh dear. They were. Now, what I will interject and say is that they were also German Protestants. And then there were, if you read this particular book, it says that there were French Protestants, German Protestants, and then there were Germans that didn't believe in anything.
Atheists.
But then all of a sudden in the 1800s, a certain group turned up. So what you got to ask yourself is, which Germans? Not every German is a staunch evildoer. Do you understand? And
but
then,
you see, even with all of this, you can see how the villains are always depicted as bad, wicked people, and not saying like to condone anything that they've done, but most of the time, the villains are the actual good people, or they're doing things for a certain cause which you might not understand at the time or get it, but once you put two and two together, it makes sense. And as you were saying about Protestants, German Protestants, Hitler was Protestant.
So let's just put a pause on that and let you think for a minute. So why was he angry and doing the things he was doing? Hold it. You guys think about it. So
what did he say in that speech before he committed? Well,
all I'm saying is this, right? First of all, a Jew is not necessarily the same as another Jew. Does that make sense? Yeah. And when, in regards to like even the 1500s, right, when all of this exiling of blacks was occurring, when some of them went to America, because it says, there's a few books I put up, but it says that they went there knowing that there would be people like them, Indians there like them, okay? Now, I'm going to be honest. Some of these Protestant Jews, like I said about in the Danzig school, they were Jews. But when they went over there, they called themselves Calvinists. So you know all these black churches, you got Apostolic, Calvinist, you got lots of different, but they were the Calvinists. You don't have to think about it that hard.
No,
They're
I'm just thinking about all the different types.
Right. That's what they did. But they did very well in the South. In fact, they were given like crazy acres of land,
Mm-hmm.
and they brought a lot of economic wealth to these places. You know, you talk about you could buy yourself out of slavery. Some of them had houses, the tenure and all that type of stuff. They were rich, weren't they?
Mm-hmm.
Right? They were wealthy, but they, because of these religious wars, because of all this killing, because of all the exiling,
Yeah.
they had to take their things and go on.
Yeah.
Now, the thing about the word Huguenot, I'll put it up there.
The definition.
It's derived from another word. I just put it up. And that word is a German word. You have to think about these things. Why does it derive from a German word? If not one German is a Jew, then why are they using a German word? Okay, right? And that word means oath.
What's it?
Now, the oath, if you read this book, you'll find out what the oath is. And that oath, it's not a good oath.
Mm.
But what you've got to ask yourself is this, and what I will also say is, in one of our previous videos, was it, what do you believe, or shall we get out? Should we get out? Something like that. We showed you certain things about the Torah. And if you look closely,
Talmud.
they
Get
said
out.
this oath is practically identical to the oath towards Gentiles.
Which is who?
Anybody that's not a Jew by birth or hasn't taken on the faith.
And the faith that you're repping.
But this is what I'm trying to say. So when you say you're a Jew, what Jew? Because not all Jews, not all Jews are the same.
They're circumcising the little baby boys. I don't want to hear it.
But they're not just circumcising.
Yeah,
We'll put the
do.
video
Yeah,
up.
please, no, I don't want to see it.
No, don't worry.
I want to hear it.
I'm going to come back to that. I'm going to come back to it, right?
It's the Jew you're repping. I don't want to hear it. No.
Right. Now, there are certain Jews that class themselves as Lutherans. Is that how you say it? Lutherans? Luciferians, well.
Please.
All I'm saying is, not all Jews believe the same thing. Just like there's many denominations of Christianity, that's where it's coming from. They don't all believe the same thing. So you have to ask, which Jew?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Now let me read out these modern Jews for you. Right? Also, you've got Sephardic Jews.
Yeah.
Which are, let me read it for you. Jewry of Hispania, also known as Sephardic Jews, and sometimes referred to by modern scholars as a Hispanic Jew, are a Jewish diaspora population. So they're not a straight Jew, they're the diaspora. Well, I'm a diaspora, but what does it... But you see, with every word, you've got to ask what diaspora? All right, okay. Population who coalesced in the Iberian Peninsula, which is Spain and Portugal. Mm-hmm. The term Sephardim derived from Hebrew Sephard, also refers to the Mizrahi Jews of Western Asia and then North Africa. But what does that mean? What you've got to understand is it doesn't mean they're African, it means they were expelled to there, or they sojourned to there to find their little promised land. Right?
The same thing with America. America being the land of free.
Right. But, okay. Although the millennia long-established latter groups do not, I shall repeat, latter groups do not have ancestry from the Jewish communities of Iberia. So you can ask two questions. So where do they have ancestry from then? Because what people don't understand is some of these Jewish people are only Jewish because they've taken on the religion, not because they are genetically connected at all. They just decided, like if I decide I'm going to go to a new church and it's Catholic, and then I become a Catholic. I wasn't born one. I'm not one by
choice.
It's like
by
me
choice.
going and living in, I don't know, China, and then now I say I'm Chinese. I'm not Chinese. I went there and I decided I'd become Chinese.
Yes.
So you got to understand that there's a lot of people out here talk about they're chosen and they're special. You're begging it. You're a beg. No, you're a beg. And let me tell you why. Right? Let me finish reading this. Right? Let me finish. So I will say it again. Millennia long established data groups do not have ancestry from Jewish communities of Iberia. The majority of them were influenced, listen to the words, by the Sephardi style of liturgy, church things, law and customs. So they adopted themselves into the community, right?
It's doing the same as the white man.
Right. Right. Well, everybody's doing the same thing. This is what the South Africans did, and now they're telling everybody they're Jews. You're not, because I read at the beginning that a Jew is not an African, and a Jew is not a Moor, because a Moor is a Muslim. So everybody's just taking people's identities because they moved into your vicinity, and then you decided you were suddenly a Jew. No, you're not. You're not. You don't get to do. What is this thing about deciding I'm just going to take your identity? And now this is necessary. Look how far it's gone now. Now Manny's out here telling me that he's a woman and I'm something else.
But this is the thing with allowing stuff, like you're making yourself become eradicated because you're just letting people take your identity.
But you can't go and take an Arab man's identity, although he took ours. Yes, I said it. I'm reading it right now. Yeah, you did.
Well,
you can't take Africans. You see, when you see the white people doing your dance moves, some people say, oh, look how our music's bringing everybody together. But some of you get very vexed and you make channels about it. Anita, is that her name? But you don't even know who you are. But is it okay then? It's not okay for everybody to take from your community, from your identity, from your culture, but it's all right for you to take ours. Would somebody please explain that to me?
But this is the thing, if there was a black girl or a black man that said, oh, I identify as white, there'll be an uproar, because it's just like...
That's right.
What are you doing?
Okay. Let me just move on.
When you say cultural appropriation, everyone's quiet.
Right. Well, let me talk to you about all the Jews that are classed as far descendants and probably not Jewish at all. So you would call them Jewish-ish. And a lot of you are Jewish-ish. And I've got something to say about that. Yeah, I do. So here we go. Related ethnic groups. Mehari Jews, Arkansas Jews, Hispanic Jews, other Jewish ethnic divisions, and Samaritans. Ooh, interesting, isn't that? Largely expelled from the Iberian Peninsula in the late 15th century, Sephardim carried a distinctive Jewish diasporic identity, Jewish and diasporic, so barely, with them to North Africa, including modern-day Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, Libya, Egypt, the Egypt of today, Southern Europe, Southern Eastern Europe, France, Italy, Greece, Bulgaria, Bosnia, and there are some others, Herzegovina, Macedonia, Western Asia, including Turkey, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Iran, as well as the Americas, although in smaller numbers compared to Arkansas Jewish diaspora. On all other places of their exiled settlement, they sometimes settled near existing Jewish communities such as the former Kurdistan, or were the first in the new frontiers with their furthest reach via Silk. Well, yeah. So all of these people that have been put in positions to denote whether somebody is saying anti-Semitic things are barely Jewish themselves.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, because you can't run this Kanye-ish on me. Because I like to read, you see. Also, Also, let's give you some more definitions to this thing, because it seems like people just using the identity to feel sweet. But you see, what you don't even understand.
No, but it's a long day because everything, karma's a real thing. That's all I can say. And everybody that thinks, oh, they're gonna continue to reign, it's no longer, because everyone's getting it left, right, and center. Seriously,
Think this is some joke thing, innit?
give people back their things. About reparations.
Let me tell you something about what I just said as well, right? Let's break down the word Arabic. Having emerged in the 1st century. Now, if you go and read that Gregorian calendar, the 1st century doesn't mean way before Christ. It means their 1st century, which we already know is when? 15 something. It is named after the Arab people. The term Arab was initially used to describe those living in the Arabian Peninsula. Language family, first. Afro-Asiatic.
Yeah.
All right, it's all right. Then after that, it says Semitic, West Semitic, Central Semitic. So, okay, let me carry on, yeah, because I got a bee in my bonnet. Now let's break down the word Semitic. Relating to or denoting a family of languages that includes Hebrew, Arabic, Aramaic, and certain ancient languages such as Phoenician and Akkadian, constituting the main subgroup of the Afro-Asiatic family. Do you have an afro?
Word. Nigga.
If you don't have an afro, which is not even what our hair is called, but anyway,
Yeah, please.
You know what it means. Then, are you the first or the last? So what business do you have telling people like Kanye and Kyrie what they can and cannot say, and whether what they're saying is Semitic when you are barely Semitic at all? You people out here that don't know yourselves, get to know very quickly, because it seems like a bag of people have been using a black god for real and going all out on your bar-mitzvahs. But I see here is Afro-Asiatic family, and the rest of you are subgroups. Where's my ish? Please. And what I would like to say is, actually, as the head of all of your subgroups, I am thoroughly offended that you have the absolute cheek to talk about anti-Semitism, because let me tell you what's anti-Semitic as the head of the subgroup, all of you. You know what's anti-Semitic? To know that what we promote is righteousness, but you've got the head of the of all of the subgroups whining out their batties, right, for cash. Yeah. You're the head of our record labels. We're not allowed to sing about righteousness. We're not allowed to dress appropriately. You don't take us on. Listen to me. You have no right to tell. You have no right to tell anybody who is of a certain hue with a afro that anything they say is anti-Semitic. Miss Essa. Anybody can come for me all you like. All the evidence is here. I am thoroughly offended, and every damn thing you have ever said is anti-Semitic. I'm seeing certain heads of the Jewish communities putting out messages to our black people, how we love you. That's weird. Never heard that before, have you?
No. Well, this is the thing. You got Mark Zuckerberg blocking people off.
Who are you?
The internet.
You have no business telling anybody with an afro that they're anti-Semitic, because you're barely Semitic at all.
Literally laughing at us, and you see like parties, you have a clown. And the clown.
We're the clown. Oh, please go.
with
Please
the
talk
afro.
it. Please
You
talk
got the
it.
red nose, but that's really just to take the piss out of our big noses.
Now, let me explain something else to you.
We're just a joke to them, basically.
Let me tell you something else. Just because. So first of all, by now, anybody that has a certain amount of understanding or overstanding, you must know that if you are an Israelite, you have been exiled from Europe, Jerusalem, and ended up in the promised land in America. I ain't got time for this long thing. Get with the program, right? Understand also, yes, any people with the French names and the French places, and also what that word means, Huguenot, the German explanation, it means confederate. So you need to kind of consider what your flag's about. I don't have time for this, you know. I don't have time. Let me tell you why I don't have time. And all you scared youths, so don't say anything. I am the first. If I want to talk, I have every right to talk. Let me tell you how you messed up with your oath. Let me show you how. Gentile, explanation, not Jewish. But I just said most of these people are hardly Jewish at all. What you did was you took up yourself into Jewish communities and adopted the faith. So you're not Jewish. You're not a Jew. You're not Jewish. You're hardly Jewish at all. Okay. So who's really the Gentile here? Pagan. A person holding religious beliefs other than those of the main world religions. A Muslim majority had to live in close proximity to large communities of Christians and pagans. A pagan is an Indian. You see, people don't seem to get it. Indians and Huguenots or Jews were marrying each other. Some of them were. But some of them were killing off Indians as well. And then there's another thing that irritates me too. So when you read these historic events that talk about rebellions, and they say a North African helped the people out of slavery. I'm a lot of things, but I'm mainly Jamaican.
Please.
And a Jamaican does not need anybody's bombard help to get themselves out of nothing.
Or put warm water on it.
Right. So all of this, that's another thing I'm offended about. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with an African brother helping me, but nobody can lead me out of nothing. I'm Jamaican. I'm offended by that as well. Just wanted to say that. Nah, taking the mic about.
I'm offended.
Nah, I'm mad offended. So, if we go by this oath then, as the real Jew,
Jamaican,
and everybody else is actually a pagan, okay, let's not call you a pagan, but a Gentile, then does that oath apply to you now? I suggest people go read that book because you think this is a joke thing, but basically them little FEMA camps have got lined up for you because it's in there. It's their oath. It's part of their oath. It's part of their oath not to give you back your things. It's part of the oath. Did you know that? And to sell you on to third parties, it's part of their oath. But who gave them that jurisdiction when you're not even a Jew?
They made it for themselves. But I swear it says as well, any person that tries to read the thing as well will be killed.
They're not supposed to looks up to the Sabbath and does other things. Do you know that you're not? To them, what she just said, yeah. So every black person talk about the Sabbath. Do you even know what that Sabbath thing's really about? You know, people really get me mad. They're not even joking. Nobody thinks, but you will go out and see a car and read the contract to see how long you got to pay, how much you got to pay each month. You will sit down, look in your bank account, think about how many hours you do at work, but you won't go and check if your Bible's the real deal.
Well, it's been handed down in each generation.
I don't care. I don't care. You can't give me something. Tell me, yeah. Nah, blood.
But Mum, look how long it's taken for this to even come out.
I don't care.
You know what I mean?
I don't care. You know what? This is why I understand when Kanye said seemed like a choice.
Yeah, facts.
Because you have a choice to use your brain and think. And every time any of us during all of this time when certain information wasn't privy, questioned it, everybody pushed us down and put olive oil. Let's say get idiots. You know what they got waiting for you? You know what? I can't even. And anybody, let me just make something clear right now. Anybody that knows me and knows my heritage and knows that my granddad was a bishop, I'd like you to know he sat me down on his bed before he died not so long ago and said with my brother, youngest brother, next to him, you're next. You run the church next. And I said, me. Little did I know that it was this that I had to do. So you can say what you like, but what's the main point of why I'm saying what I'm saying? So you can free yourself. Because it's not a joke thing to them. Do you think they want to give up all this luxury they've been living? All this position they've been having? And everybody that said I was cuckoo, you can go do that. This is who I am. This is who I always was, but I had no guidance. And I'd like to say also, respectfully, not cool. That's what I'd like to say. And for now, I think we'll end it there. What we do have for you next is who your Jesus is and where they're going from. Peace out.